I feel like content has evolved to become something that is so tied to brand affinity and like, oh, I need to go learn something or I need to go figure something out. I'm going to go to these people who I trust. It's almost like we have to break through, but also be so clear in our story that people understand exactly why they're going to come back and back.
Welcome to the Digital Advantage by Bynder, a show by marketers for marketers who want to create engaging content experiences to differentiate their brand from the competition. In each episode, a member of the Bynder team will host a conversation with a leading marketing expert to discuss trends, challenges, solutions, and how to remain competitive in an uncertain economic landscape. Our guests will share stories that showcase innovative ways of using content to inspire marketing leaders to take action, optimize their content strategies, and ultimately achieve the success they seek. Let's jump right in.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Digital Advantage. As always, it's a show for marketers who want to create standout content to differentiate their company from the competition. And luckily today, we have two people with us who help companies do just that. So we're going to dive into the strategic importance of content and how to drive value through a content program today. So joining me to do that, we're very lucky to have both Zoe Hawkins, content principal at Sumo Logic. Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
And Sara Stella Lattanzio, who is B2B content advisor and senior marketing manager at Adnovum. Hi, Sara Stella.
Hey.
Great. And so, yeah, we might probably just jump straight into this one because I think we will have a very interesting chat. You know, we released this year or recently our State of Content report, which I know you sent over to both and you had a look at and given some feedback on, which is great. And one of the leading things from that is that we saw that 69% of marketing leaders are, planning to maintain or increase their investment in content in 2023. And that is in the face of a down economy as well. So, Zoe, maybe I'll come to you. What do you think is behind that? Yeah, what are the forces driving that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's been a recognition over the years that it went from kind of content is king as a cliche to recognizing the value and the importance of content in different channels and different approaches. It's not just spin up a blog and you're done. It's social, it's video, it's a wide range of content that needs to be created. And so I think that there's been a real push towards different mediums and that's driving an uptick in investment. Even things like infographics or videos or, different interactive elements take a lot of time and effort to create. And then I think it's also, as people realize that they need to be careful with their budgets, we can't just spend for growth at any cost. I think that content has a really impressive ROI, whether you're using it with your ads or for organic traction, it can kind of pull double duty on that front. I don't know, Sara Stella, what do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to be always like the evil one, but I'm famous for contradicting people. But I mean, my experience is what people say and what they do is very different very often. And obviously, when you interview like a CEO or a CMO, they will always say, yes, we're doing this and we're doing everything and all of it. I think that nowadays people, even kind of the less digital and people who mainly weren't that good at marketing are realizing that content is the new marketing in a way. And so they are like, yeah, we need to do it, or our competitors are doing. They see those awesome campaigns, but then they also can't put their finger on it. So they really don't know all the complexity and all what it really takes to do kind of a serious content strategy that drives result. And obviously, with all this AI and ChatGPT bubble, there has been a lot of FOMO and kind of really everybody wants to do content. So, and one last thing that I've also seen a lot with the companies that I work is that a lot of people come to me saying, yeah, we've been, heavily using Google Ads and this as if this wasn't content, but basically it's not scaling, And so now we heard that organic is the golden key. And so this might also, and it's free on top of that. So, which is not true. So yeah, that's a bit the situation in my opinion.
For sure. I think it's totally true that what people say they'll do and what they actually do are not necessarily the same things, and the best laid plans, you know, can go up in smoke when we're facing, like you say, a down economy, or the wild card through this first half of this year that was generative AI in particular, that had us all sort of scrambling and wondering what it could possibly do for us. I mean, the trends are there, the impetus is there, right? You're touched neatly on one, that we used to have this sort of controlled environment where we could, particularly in B2B space, target people, send them to our website, gate it, have a nice little ROI. But the way buyers have changed in the B2B space is it requires a different thought strategy for, you know, tech companies in particular. I think on the B2C side, you're just having, you know, one of the things that came out of the same report, our state of content report, was that 66% of respondents said that they were using 11 channels or more for their marketing, right? So again, the things you're saying there, the variety of the content, the actual formats, how do you stay on top of the engagement with your audience consistently, giving them new and fresh content? So the number of channels, the varieties, the formats on those, that's just the kind of thing where people are looking at going, we have to absolutely invest. So I think it's all true. But again, I do like that idea of, yeah, but did they actually invest? You know what I mean? So maybe that's something we can have a look at a little bit. So I guess maybe we could just, you know, jumping off from that, Sara Stella, if you have those thoughts that are a little bit against the grain, maybe you could tell us what are the trends that you've noticed that have increased the strategic importance of content?
I think, yes, in general, I feel a lot of people come at me a lot more conscious, in the sense that they already say we're doing random acts of content, so they are aware already. This is a very good sign. I think also the abundance of content is stimulating this thing, because people see just a lot more. I mean, I don't know, a couple of years ago, it was very innovative to have a YouTube channel, or to have, I don't know, like even a LinkedIn presence. I mean, I started posting on LinkedIn a couple of years ago, and already then people were like, oh, you post on LinkedIn, that's weird. And now it's like everybody's posting on LinkedIn. So definitely, I think one is the desire to stick out, and also being like, we are investing so much in this, because obviously when they hire people, then they realize, you know, that it's not free. And so we have a content team, and we cannot say what's coming out of this, you know? And so basically this, and what I said before, that they're noticing that paid efforts are not scaling. So if you're, for example, very frequent use case is like the typical startup that becomes a scale up. And so they are past the product market fit at some point, and they're like, yeah, we've grown, you know, past Google ads, but my God, we have no brand, you know, we have clients, we have no brand, and also we have no stories to tell. And we're all about bottom of the funnel, have nothing on top of that. And we exhausted everybody who's in market right now. And so what do we do? And then obviously they come to people like me, and then I come up with I say what content strategy is, what is missing. And yeah, that's a bit the situation.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder as well, I feel like content goes in these waves where it like sprawls and becomes everything. And, you know, kind of, you touched on it, Sara Stella, you know, earlier when you were saying like content is marketing, and it becomes this whole like, it's the end all be all, and it's ads and it's blogs and it's videos and it's also like case studies and white papers and
events. It's also
events and field. And what are we going to put on our big wall at this, you know, big expo? And it, you know, all of those pieces become content because they're part of the brand and part of the comms and part of the storytelling. And I feel like this has been, at least for me, like an interesting thing to ride that wave of, you know, sometimes PR is part of my role and sometimes it's not. Sometimes internal comms becomes content marketing and sometimes that's pulled away. And like seeing that ebb and flow within an organization, I think also kind of showcases where their head is at in terms of prioritizing content and why. And I think it's true. I think there's an element of standing out. I think there's also just so much content now. And I think this has been true for a long time, but you know, I see it for myself, how many newsletters I subscribe to that I never get around to reading, and like how many people I follow on, you know, LinkedIn or Twitter, X, I don't know, whatever. I'm not on there anymore, but you know, like whatever I'm following on different social media platforms that I don't even open. that I don't even check, and just kind of, in order to break through that, I feel like content has had to, not just stand out with a shock value or something like that, but your brand needs to become even stronger so that you become the touch point that people think of. One of the things I've really enjoyed that I wasn't aware of until TikTok actually is, so like Duolingo has done a really fun job of that. They made it that their like little character has a crush on Dua Lipa. And then like the TSA, which to me has always just been like, well, if I have to travel and goes through security, it's going to be a nightmare. They like got on with all the airport dad memes of like, how early should you arrive at the airport? And like people who get there 4 hours early, 5 hours, and just kind of playing off of that. And I feel like content has evolved to become something that is so tied to brand affinity and like, oh, I need to go learn something or I need to go figure something out. I'm going to go to these people who I trust. And so, yeah, I think content has evolved now where it's not just shock value, let's break through and cut through by doing something different. It's almost like we have to break through, but also be so clear in our story that people understand exactly why they're going to come back and back.
Yeah, I think you need to earn the trust that they consume your content in the first place. That's the point.
Yeah. I think that's also, it's like it used to be enough to be ranked #1 on Google. Oh, you're #1 on Google, you'll get the click. And I think now it's like, oh, you're ranked #1 on Google. I do it myself. I'm like, oh, that's the #1 result. Oh, but actually I know the brand that's in position 5. I'm going to go click into their content and see what they have to say. So definitely a trust building thing as well happening around content too.
So much of that is brilliant. And it's just like, it's just so complex. It just leads to the complexity, right, of being a modern day marketer and all these changes happening. And so I guess I have nothing to add that you haven't had. I think you covered the bases there, but I'm left with a question, right? Like, let's assume this investment, they want to make the investment, these marketing leaders, and they do. What kind of investments are they planning to make? Should they be planning to make in order to, capitalize, assuming they're coming from the situation that we've described into this sort of slightly new world or experience as well? Maybe, Zoe, you might like to take a punt at that one.
I mean, I think it varies so much. Obviously, there's no one answer for that. I think the key that I'm seeing in terms of the companies and the brands that get it right versus the ones that don't is I think the people who get it right are the ones who don't assume you're going to be interested in them. The ones who really get inside the head of their customer, really get inside the head of their audience and go, okay, what do they actually care about? What are they grappling with? What is happening in their lives? And how can I, help or support or make them laugh or entertain them? Whatever that looks like, that just adds so much more value and then is able to use that as a jumping off point to do other types of content. So like I see it in the developer community, a lot of it is just teaching and offering how-tos and making it super easy to like, just copy paste this code snippet and your thing will work. Like all of those kinds of pieces that I think as content marketers, it's like, okay, what can I do that will make their life easier? So that then once they know like, oh, I can trust these people, they write good code or they have interesting solutions to these complicated questions. Now I'll trust them to maybe look at other things that I'm dealing with. So that's something like on a developer audience, which I think in tech, then you also still have to talk to an executive buyer sometimes. And like, that's a whole different kind of content that you need to deliver to them to kind of prove that you're a thought leader. And I always laugh because I think a lot of thought leadership posts have neither thought nor leadership. And so I think that that's like a big piece of it is not just putting something out there for the sake of it, but really centering your reader, centering your viewer, your listener, whatever that means for you. It's really centering the audience and then being able to determine what piece is going to be the most helpful and impactful for them to kind of break through.
For sure. Sara Stella?
So for me, the investments I have seen, and I'm talking more about really structural rather than what format or what not, because that really depends on the company, let's say. But I mean, if they don't have a content strategy, they also pick their investment pretty randomly. But let's say so I know more, let's say, middle to smaller business. And if in case of smaller businesses, let's say where you have just one marketer in charge of everything, then obviously they are starting to invest into building a net of freelancers and maybe an advisor to guide them more on the content side. Maybe a bit less this year. I've seen a slowdown in general in requests also for me. I guess everybody that I talk to has seen the same. And also automations in the sense, to automate, all these repetitive tasks like, the briefings and just like notifications that content is out, all of those things. And obviously all the AI tool situation that I mentioned before in terms of, whatever you can, some people do it a bit too much, but basically, letting this stuff that you can then edit quickly using AI tools to create more content. And I say if companies are a bit bigger and they're thinking about hiring somebody in-house or hiring a bigger content team in-house, because for some companies, even having one content marketing manager is like rocket science. And then you have a lot more companies that have, like SEO specialists and all of those things. But what I notice, and since on LinkedIn, my network is mostly US based, but I'm in Switzerland, so I'm totally European based. I see such a mismatch because I feel Europe is so far behind also in terms of, and this kind of really replicates what we said before, that some people still don't understand what content is because they basically think that you only have copywriter roles or SEO specialist roles, but you don't really have those strategic roles or the role that has an overview of all the content produced. And so in the end, it just becomes like a segmentation as usual, right?
I also feel like, when people don't value the strategic nature of content, you end up with the hamster wheel or the like engine or whatever people want to call it, where it's just churning out content, for no clear reason, not being purposeful about it. And I often call it like industrial fallout, because you just end up with so much junk on a website, so much content that doesn't feed the core objectives, that doesn't promote what the company is actually trying to do. And that can happen whether you have an in-house copywriter content, junior content sort of person that gets brought on, or someone who brings on their army of freelancers and agencies. And it's just like, okay, we're going to rank for all of these things. Go right. And you end up with just so much regurgitated, generic pieces that, are not going to be interesting to read. They're not going to help your organization. And they actually just kind of drag everything down.
He hit on, there's one thing that's sort of come up there a few times. One is like, what is content? And I don't think that's necessarily something, something a question we want to ask today, but it does come to something that really has come up in a few of my conversations so far through these chats, is sitting down with people and clarifying and defining a word like content. For example, I spoke to somebody, not for this, but somebody's considered a marketing leader on a global scale, and they very much said, when I started talking about digital ads, they're like, well, that's not content, like paid ads. And I was like, it absolutely is for a lot of companies, paid ad, and it's delivering your message. He said, that's not when I say content, that's not what I'm thinking. I meant very much thought leadership kind of stuff, as you described, sort of meant there, which is absolutely fine. That's his business. But for the majority of businesses, that's not true. That's a huge amount of the content, blogs and digital ads and everything. So I think that's really sort of interesting conversation to have with people first off when you're sitting down and trying to decide this. I'll let you know a little bit about our thing, right? About nearly 2 years ago, we sat down and we mapped our buyer's journey. Off the back of that, we said, here are some gaps on channels and the message that we're putting out there that we don't have. We set out with the strategic goal, which was like, to add value consistently across these channels when we were creating content. And this year, introduce a tactical effort to repurpose. So our investment has been in, to pick a channel to win on. And that's why we're kind of doing this. And to do that, we have to say we want to add value. So we want to bring your voices to our audience, but it's also going to exist across, across our blogs, across our social employee advocacy, across our organic social. It's also going to be chopped up in a short form, and it's available in different formats as well. So that's kind of, I trust that you both would know better than me how good or not that is. But when I talk about like where the investment's going to be made, it's, well, where is your audience what do you need to reach them effectively, and how can you get the greatest value from it? So that was kind of how we went about it, I think, just for, in practical terms, offer my sort of basic perspective on these things.
Yeah, I actually wanted to mention, I forgot, but I really wanted to mention also this influencer or, like thought leaders in B2B. But I think it all the umbrella of, just bringing more the human aspect. It can also be an employee program, can also be a customer ambassador program. But it's a culture of content that if you don't have it, you will not just pull it out of the head. Exactly.
I think the most important thing, that's the most important thing I would say, is that we had a real buy-in from leadership of a consistent message, a top-down. This is how we defined a mission that said we're going to deliver on this topic, and that is everything we talk about, which empowers a huge amount of our employees now to be able to talk about that as well. So I'd say maybe if there was one investment, it would be invest in an idea right around that and be consistent with it.
I love that. We did a similar exercise in the past year or so of establishing our content mission. So we have our company mission and then kind of our content mission. And that was a really interesting exercise. I mean, of course, you put a bunch of content people in a room to talk about content, very meta, very quickly. Like we're debating on like, do we want to use the word engage or inspire? And what do these words mean to us? But it was really helpful to clarify what we were trying to do with our content as our content mission, so that every piece, every request, every, campaign or project we take on really comes back to like, okay, but does this support our content mission? And it's been such a great kind of gut check to have. So I love that voice and that mission kind of kickstarted this idea and has supported it throughout. So that's really cool to hear.
Well, it's amazing to hear on your side as well. Maybe you're not doing things so badly. I think that's a really good practical tip for anybody listening today to go away and maybe address that with their team. So I guess before we get into like wins or actionable steps that people can take, like in a practical sense, Sara Stella, you work with, lots of companies. Like, where are they falling down? What are the obstacles they're running up against to really be able to execute effectively across, their content goals, right? Whether that's creating, managing, distributing, judging ROI, that sort of stuff. What are they bumping up against?
Well, I mean, obviously, overall, the lack of content strategy, because they don't think one is needed until they realize that they need one in a way. It's kind of a chicken and egg. So, I mean, basically, they come saying, like all of our channels are a bit random. I mean, we post one post there, we have an intern there. So all things disconnected, and the problem just gets bigger the longer this has been done. For example, when you overinflate your website, or when you you invest basically in nothing for years. But also, I think, especially in B2B, the problem is that I always say this, without people outside of the marketing department. I mean, if you work for Coca-Cola, maybe you can, if you're a good writer and you are fond of the product, blah, blah, you can still create content, right? But if you work for example, in a tech company where you're selling something, that is also not for marketers, it's super technical, you have zero chance to create any sort of content because you're so far from the customer. Most of the time, on top of what I'm saying, they have never once run a customer interview. So you are totally reliant on your on your experts to basically, I say, the expert need to become the brain of the marketer, and the marketer is the hands who does the job. And so if there is not if the experts don't see this as part of their job, which is very often the problem, in the sense, hey, we have marketing for this, we hire X people for this, why are you coming to me, right? It's your job. But also, if the marketer cannot say what the business impact of content can be, this will never work in a way. Yeah, this is the biggest problem I have seen, to be honest.
I think there are so many
where to
problems.
start? Yeah, I think that slide was like,
how
long do we have? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Are we doing a full episode on this?
Yeah.
I think one of the things I see a lot is this desire to chase the next shiny object. We all saw it at the start of the year, generative AI, ChatGPT, and everybody was like, how are we going to use this? What are we going to do with this? How is this going to, that was like every conversation that I was pulled into was kind of like, are we using it? Can we use it? What does that mean? And kind of chasing this instead of really saying like, and it's the same like we've seen with automation. It's the same, any of these trends that come out. It's like, let's automate this. It's like, okay, what do you want to automate? Like, I love automation. I think it's magic, but you can't just like automate anything. Like, you have to have certain tasks that are clearly automatable. And I don't know, I'm going to make that word.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. Because I said it before. Because
there
I can speak English.
We're just inventing language here. But, so automation went that way. AI goes that way. I think that there's this desire to chase the shiny object instead of saying like, okay, cool. We're going to play with it. We're going to become familiar with it. We're not going to be technophobes over here being like, no AI ever. But, we need to kind of become familiar with it, but not be so enamored that we drop everything else that we've been doing. And I think that's where I see a lot of companies. I mean, I keep reading these horror stories about, companies that get rid of their entire content team because now they're going to use, ChatGPT or whatever AI, writing models. And then they're like, oh, this isn't working. It's like, yeah, what a big surprise. Like anyone could have told you that. And kind of recognizing the strengths of some of these innovations and also the drawbacks and being a bit more purposeful and taking a bit more time to be like, okay, cool. Personally, I've found a lot of utility out of, any of these AI writing tools or AI content support systems. I kind of think of them almost like the army of freelancers that Sara Stella talked about for smaller teams. I think it can be great to have an AI writer on your team, but you need to still treat them as like your junior AI writer who's going to like spit out 20 headlines and maybe one has one good phrase that you're going to pull from and use. And so I think that's something that I'm seeing companies kind of stumble on, is this desire to be cutting edge without necessarily really evaluating, okay, but how? What does that mean to embrace these things?
I would also add, you make me think about it. Yeah, the systems in the end, yes, you shouldn't automate, especially if you don't have nothing to scale or something broken to scale. But I feel that especially, I'm working only with tech company. Even I've worked with tech company that were still in the 90s sometimes mentality and marketing wise. So those people and a lot of companies still think that content is something purely creative, a bit like, they think also that marketing is something creative because we do the PowerPoints or something, But to be honest, especially if you want to scale content, and scale doesn't mean like necessarily like programmatic SEO that you spam 200 low quality pages on your site just to rank, but also, having a regular pipeline, having some templates that you can, fill with different formats. You need also systems, and you need to work on the systems. And there are so many companies who have, they maybe have the tools, but they don't have the systems yet. And also they have, for example, no tone of voice. So they have maybe 3 in-house writers or something, and everybody just writes the way they feel that day. It. Bynder, if you don't know that, you need to have systems. So
for sure. Well, listen, yeah, you got me onto that, but yeah, for sure. Definitely, guidelines around things is crucial. It's definitely one of the things our customers come to talk to us, about the need to have these set guidelines, particularly if you get to a larger scale and you're like partner networks and franchisees and everything. Those kind of things can be, but even for internal teams as well, where stuff's used, rights management, etc. Those are the basics. But I love the shiny object syndrome. We had a guest on previously, Trinity Nguyen from UserGem, shout out Trinity, and she's like that, and I'm like, I felt seen. It was that thing of, I'm always like, I'd probably be the one here at Bynder they could point the finger out for that. I'm like, what about this thing? What if we do this? So, hopefully my team sort of rein me in occasionally on that one. But the strategy thing is true as well. Now, I just have this feeling, it's like companies that are coming without a content strategy was so easy for so long. The content was distributed to end touch points that you could have a click on, you could have a measurable piece. But now it's that idea we were talking about earlier of, your content, every touch point somebody has with your content then informs their impression of your brand. And for example, if your Instagram page is constantly on sale, you know, and it is so it can features and benefits or whatever, then that you're the features and benefits company. You're not the company who means something, and ultimately it's the companies who mean something are able to convey and solve problems and add value. They're the ones that are going to get the customers and the lifetime, the better lifetime value is my take. So that's kind of maybe a little bit more, like a little bit of a 30,000 foot view, but sort of my take on what's happening to companies and blocking in them at the moment. Okay, so let's give people a small bit of hope before we sort of wrap up here. If they're listening today, what should they be hopeful for and about? What actions or steps can they take to, this imagined investment we're talking about here, to ensure it's spent well, so that they can feel, good about their content investment? Sara Stella, you work with loads of companies. What are you telling them?
Okay, so obviously I will say pat on my own back, or like sing my own song. I don't know what the metaphor is, but obviously I think the secret is really planning it as a strategy. I mean, a content strategy is a business strategy, right? So if you have long-term goals, you have mid-term goals, you have short-term goals, and you need to sit down, make a plan, revise it, audit what you're doing, see if it's going well or not. More on tactical level, especially, I always talk about B2B because that's what I know. So stop doing the content based on assumptions, and really find a way to involve the customers in your content process. And the way to do it is just building stronger ties with customer success and sales and product, in the sense that, for example, every time there is a conversation with those teams going on, that they refer back to you with the information regarding pain points and features and all of these things. And so that you can really enrich and update your personas, kind of constantly. That's what it means, that personas are not a static exercise. And also, I believe that we need, like B2B companies need also subject matter experts that in their job description have a chunk of content creation. They don't necessarily, not everybody wants to do it, especially in tech companies. They don't want to be maybe, like posting on LinkedIn. Not all of them want, but at least, supporting the marketing team. And obviously, if there are people that want, for example, at my current job role, a full-time role, in-house role, there is a person who is kind of a voice bot expert, so chatbot expert in a way, conversational AI it's called. So he posts on LinkedIn. He has 2,000 followers or whatever, so definitely not like a big number, but literally his engagement is crazy. He gets so many, contact requests, even for speaking. And we did a test that for webinars, we never really were able to drive many webinar subscriptions through paid advertising, And he posted, when he was the expert talking at the webinar, he posted on LinkedIn, and he basically drove all the subscriptions of the webinar just because people trust him and like him and want to hear him speak. So that was also an eye-opener, that you should really, and those people that want to create content, want to have a voice, marketing in a company should almost create the content for them as much as possible, or make it easy for them to create it, because they are going to drive more visibility than actually the company organic or paid channels, in my opinion. So that's
for sure. Building, having those people with a brand or a persona, or like an audience, internally, and empowering them to do it and trusting them to do it is hugely powerful. I think, algorithmically and sort of like, what we see, we're very much made aware of that, but also that's based on a value that we have in individual relationships rather than relationship with brands. So would totally agree there. Zoe, yeah?
Yeah. I think one of the things that gives me hope, hopefully from a high level, is I think, there's, for all the junk that we got used to consuming for, 6 months when we were all just like eating everything ChatGPT served up. I think now there's greater appreciation for thought leadership and for personal expertise and for trusted individuals. I think that we've all kind of read I think my favorite term was a broem. I think that's what they call it on LinkedIn, when like guys share like a 3-line, like, these are the 3 things I do for success or whatever. They call it a bro-up, which I kind of love, broetry.
Brilliant.
But, that was what ChatGPT was giving us. That's what generative AI was giving us, was like, what should I post on LinkedIn? And it would tell you that, versus truly bringing your authentic self, truly bringing what you've learned and grown into an experience. People can recognize that authenticity now, I think. I think we've gone through the uncanny valley of like, this is almost like a person, to now being like, oh no, this is what a person sounds like. This is what we want to connect with. And so that gives me hope that people can recognize good content. I think from a tactical perspective, what I'm also seeing is that with a greater investment in content, one of the things that at least I'm getting to talk about a lot more and being heard when I talk about a lot more is optimizing what we already have. People have already made investments in content over the years, a lot of them. And now they're kind of bought into the idea of like, okay, let's actually like do something with that stuff we made. Like, let's actually improve it and make sure it's really high quality and distributed properly and repurposed in ways that aren't just cutting trash into many pieces of trash, but like making something really valuable and getting it in front of people in different formats. So I feel like this idea of optimizing things for just improving the quality of the content, but also optimizing for conversion and making sure that it's really easy to consume across different channels. There seems to be a lot more interest in that. And that gives me hope that hopefully we'll see people being a bit more tactical and strategic with their content going forward.
One of the things we released a ChatGPT integration recently, and it's that we want to try to be responsible about it for those exact reasons. It's like trying to reduce time to first draft, but ultimately having that human writing it and finishing it in their voice as well as the company's voice as well, I think is incredibly important. I was thinking about this morning, as I like to come with something myself, but the one you mentioned automation here a little bit. I always think like if you want to plan your investments well, it's like that idea of, try and look at where your investments can connect from a technology perspective, right? Is it connected to your other technologies? Because you're going to remove the tedious tasks that your team are doing. And that's also the thing about generative AI, removing a tedious task, right? As opposed to doing the work for you. I think that's kind of one way to think about it. And also, as somebody who manages efforts like this with other people and also, technology as well, communicating the value of it to your team, to making sure that they know that there is, if it's not very clear in like, let's say an ROI sense, that it is supporting in some way and communicating that around the business as well, is a huge way to make sure that certainly the perceived impact of like it may be very impactful, but if you don't tell anybody about it, it's not going anywhere, right? So I would sort of say that's something you could do to help yourself out in your day to day if you're feeling a little bit up against the wall on this sort of thing. So why don't I give it over to whoever is brave enough to go first to just give us a little key takeaway for anybody listening today. What is the most important thing people should take away?
That ChatGPT is not a substitute for the strategy, for sure.
Great.
And that we should also stop chasing shiny objects in content.
You took my one,
Yeah.
Sara Stella. Jeez,
Of course.
I was going to leave you
Of
strategy and I was going to take the shiny objects,
Yeah, because I'm here to interact. I'm not here to repeat my...
But yeah, I agree. I think the strategic nature of content that this investment needs to build towards a strategy, and also that we need to be really purposeful and not just chase the latest, greatest thing, but kind of be aware of the pros and cons behind them and not just automate all of your AI and then be like, why isn't this working? I don't know what's happening. So yeah.
And definitely also, don't plan your content strategy without knowing who your customer is and how they progress, because there is no content strategy that is per default the right one. It varies according to every company and every customer journey.
100% agree.
That's brilliant. I was actually really looking forward to this episode for a particular reason, just that we were going to dive into the real content side of it. It's something that I've become a lot more comfortable with over the course of this episode and the course of working much more closely with our content team and really seeing the value that it can bring to the whole business if done right. We've made that shift from lots of pieces to core pieces that exist everywhere through the year. And that sort of strategic mindset has been amazing. So for us, it's brought the team together, brought our message together across the board. So I was really glad to be able to explore that with both of you. So all that remains is for me to thank you both for coming. So thank you. And yeah, to anybody listening, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify for further episodes, and we'll be back again soon.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Digital Advantage, brought to you by Bynder, the leading digital asset management platform. Bynder helps you conquer the chaos of growing content, touchpoints, and relationships. If you found this episode inspiring, you'll love our additional content on our social channels, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform.